If you were to look at Earth from the International Space Station at night, you'd be able to see the lights of the cities from space. That's how big our impact as a species is. There are huge multicultural cities all around the world. We've built buildings so high they nearly disappear out of sight. Cities built from the ground up for thousands and thousands of people to live in. But oh, what's this? What a beautiful monkey! What are you doing there, buddy? You want that banana? Yeah, it looks delicious. Be careful now, don't fall down that tree. Oops. Boy, nature can be so brutal sometimes. I'll bet it didn't wake up thinking it was going to become a lion's breakfast. What? No humans? Where did they all go? Looks like when that monkey fell from the tree, it created a chain of events that led to no humans ever existing on Earth. I know what this is. We must be in an alternate universe. Well, let's skip a few thousand years ahead. What does Earth look like? Humans have altered about 50% or more of the planet's surface. So there aren't going to be any cities or landscape previously shaped by us in this reality. There's not going to be a human touch at all. The Earth now seems to be an animal paradise. They're everywhere. These animals that were previously only found in Africa are now all over different continents. There are lions roaming free in America. Oh, and look, in Europe, there are rhinos, elephants, wolves. Wow, moose. Even bears are here. Since there are no humans taking up most of Earth's space, mammals are now free to be everywhere. Well, you know, different mammals than us. There's a huge diversity of them too. Earth has become what seems to be an expansion of the Africa we know today in terms of animal species. You can see large mammals too. Giant sloths, saber-tooths, and even mastodons are now walking the Earth like in the olden times. The reason why our Earth isn't like this is that humans take up a lot of the available space with their structures. For example, the reason why there's so much animal diversity in Africa in our universe isn't that the continent is just suited for animals to thrive. It's mostly because we haven't been too active in a big part of the continent. Our ancestors had a lot to do with the extinction of large mammals. Ice Age wasn't the only culprit there. On our Earth, humans are the intelligent life form. How about on this planet? As you might know, natural selection is what guides evolution. This, combined with random mutations we can observe in some species, suggests that even without humans on Earth, there's a chance for intelligent life to develop. So, primates are now the dominant life form, or maybe the meerkats evolved into a dominant species. The climate on this Earth is also cooler than ours. That's because there are no greenhouse gases. According to NASA, the current Earth warming trend is likely the result of human activity since the 1950s. This means the increased levels of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere are the reason why our planet warms up. Greenhouse gases are called like this because, just like a greenhouse, they trap the heat. They let sunlight pass through the atmosphere, but the heat it brings doesn't leave our atmosphere because of them. They're a good thing because otherwise life on Earth wouldn't even be possible. But because now they're too abundant, it causes the planet to warm more than it should. Now, let's go back to our alternate Earth. In the water, the Great Barrier Reef in Australia is still fully intact. And it's still the largest coral reef system there is, as well as the biggest living organism on the planet, just like ours. This new Earth is also full of trees, and lush ones at that. Greenery everywhere. All sorts of trees exist and are home to all the different animals on the planet. And since there's no deforestation, the planet's lungs, the Amazon rainforest, is able to thrive and is looking more alive and vibrant than ever. But say, what if humans were to show up on this Earth right now? Maybe this year, or the year before? They certainly wouldn't be the dominant species immediately, and would probably struggle at the very beginning. The evolution and learning process would be a slow one until they find themselves at the top. They have to adapt to their new home. This would be like traveling to around 130,000 years ago in our reality, to a place where modern humans, or Homo sapiens, had just shown up. Humans back then weren't new. The only new thing about them was that they evolved into Homo sapiens. It wasn't like we were dropped off from a spaceship onto Earth or anything like that. But in this alternative reality, That's exactly what happened. A bunch of humans were dropped from the sky on Earth. Now, they must learn everything from the ground up. They need to figure out how to survive and thrive in their new environment. They have to hunt for their own food, and they need to take what they can from the planet, much like we did 130,000 years ago. These new humans are nomads. They can't settle in one exact place because they need to explore and understand their surroundings, just like the animals that surround them. As their groups become larger, they split into smaller ones to find new places suited to build their homes, or even a place where survival might be easier. Since it's been a while that they've arrived on this new Earth, they've done some exploring and found themselves more comfortable in their new setting. Their tools are better developed, and home-like structures, like huts, finally start appearing. 50,000 years ago, we developed our language. These humans also developed their own because they need to communicate better with each other. With language, they become more and more organized and are able to make better plans for their future. All dogs come from wolves, and there are two theories of how it might have happened that wild beasts became humans' best friends. One theory says early humans somehow ended up capturing wolf pups and kept them as pets, and over time they would gradually domesticate wolves. Another theory states that wolves actually domesticated themselves. It's called survival of the friendliest. Because both wolves and humans were hunters, wolves probably also figured out they would have benefits if they stuck around humans instead of competing directly with them. Some wolves were fearful and aggressive toward humans. Others might have been friendlier, which also likely gave them access to the hunter's food supplies. As time passes, modern human behavior starts showing up. Fixed homes begin to appear in places that benefit people, maybe next to a river or places where the soil is fertile. This way, they're also able to become farmers and develop agriculture. As they settle down, communities start arising too. Since they are very social beings, it's only natural they're drawn to one another. Soon humans are all over the planet, spread around the continents, with communities and families of their own, and don't forget the pets. The planet's landscape shifts like it did in our reality, to accommodate the needs of humans. Cultures are developed, rivalry begins, they start pushing each other to great lengths. Thousands and thousands more years go by, and this human society starts to look a lot like the one we have today. Still, things might have happened a different way. There might have already been an intelligent species they would have had to compete with, and then their progress would probably have staggered a bit. Maybe a society could emerge where different intelligent life forms would be able to peacefully coexist. When you enter a coffee shop, a meerkat might be your barista. Your landlords could be a couple of gorilla siblings. Or when you go to a barber shop, a primate that's only wearing a barber jacket would be the one to cut your hair. If not, it's likely things would end up the same as our reality. Humans would not be the most numerous species on Earth, but they would certainly still be the most impactful one.
50 ships and 20 airplanes have gone missing. Many people have disappeared, and mysterious forces might have… Oh wait, the wrong script. This Bermuda Triangle is located in Transylvania. My bad. So, once upon a time in the heart of Transylvania, there was a mysterious place that people named the Bermuda Triangle of Transylvania. Look at these twisted trees and their tangled undergrowth. It seems like some evil creature may appear from behind a tree at any moment. There might even be ghosts and mysterious creatures that came from space, as stories said. The forest became so popular in the 1960s when a man was chilling there on a warm August afternoon with his girlfriend and a couple of friends. Suddenly, his girlfriend pointed at something unusual in the sky. A man came closer to the spot where she was standing and, to his surprise, saw it too. It was a weird silver disc shining in the sky. He quickly pulled out his camera and took 4 photos before the creepy object bolted away. The object was there for a mere 2 minutes, but the man developed his film and the picture ended up being published in local papers. Many people were skeptical about this. They claimed that those were most likely some weather balloons that looked like a spaceship because they were photographed in odd lighting. But No weather balloons, blimps, or any other objects were in the sky above the forest on that day. Spooky, huh? That's not the only campfire legend from that area. Stories say that those who ventured too deep into the murky depths of this creepy place often did not return, which is how it got its nickname in the first place. There was a shepherd who entered the forest together with his 200 sheep. They were never found again. People have also been whispering stories about a 5-year-old girl who disappeared one day. She re-emerged one day, 5 years later, wearing the same clothes as the day she went missing. Plus, she hadn't aged a day. There are people who entered the forest and did manage to return, but with severe burns, high fever, and some other health issues they didn't have before. Some were sure that happened because the subsoil had lots of natural uranium with a high level of radioactivity. And according to others, it's not unusual that you come to this forest and feel like someone's watching you or your electronic devices just switch off. And now, here's something that's not a legend. The forest has a rich history. Some sources say it was home to the oldest settlement in Romania, dating all the way back to 6,500 BCE. Trees themselves are pretty mysterious. They grow in creepy spirals or have some unexpected zigzag patterns. Even though some scientists have come there to explore this phenomenon, they couldn't find the answer to why they're like this. It seems as if trees are twisting their limbs so they can reach out and grab you when you're not looking. And that's what's interesting. Each of these twisted trees spirals in a clockwise direction. But legends say lots of inexplicable things have happened in a specific part of the forest where you can't find trees or any other types of vegetation. It's a perfect circle called the clearing. The perfect name for a horror movie inspired by all these stories. The soil in this area with no vegetation has been tested, and no one has found any weird stuff or anomalies that could potentially stop plants from growing there. Some locals believe the forest has positive energy, which is why it's good to make a wish there. But many more people let their imagination run wild, telling stories about paranormal activities happening there, like mysterious spheres popping out in the middle of the forest or extraterrestrial lights. Either way, you and your castle can step aside, Dracula, because you're not the only scary story from Transylvania. Here's another reason you won't be able to sleep well tonight. The Isla de las Muñecas, or the Island of the Dolls. In the middle of the eerie and murky waters of canals near Mexico City, there's a small island. It may look charming at first, until you realize it's home to hundreds of dolls hanging from the trees and scattered throughout the overgrown vegetation. These dolls are old and decaying. They've lost their color over time, and their once cheerful faces are now twisted into expressions of despair and horror. There is a sad story behind this disturbing place. It says the island used to be home to a reclusive man who left his family more than 50 years ago to live alone on the island. He started obsessively collecting dolls that were lost in the canal. The story says he even traded products he grew to locals to get more dolls. The man didn't clean these dolls nor show any interest in fixing them. He would just decorate his island with them regardless of the state in which he found them. Even those that looked good ended up ruined due to winds and rain. They weren't just outside. His cabin was full of these scary dolls too. Many people were terrified of this place, claiming it was cursed. But others believed the dolls safeguarded the island. Moving to the suburbs of North London, where you can find the mysterious Highgate Cemetery. It's definitely not a typical resting place for the dearly departed. This cemetery has so many peculiar graves, including those of Karl Marx and Douglas Adams. But that's not what draws visitors to its gates. People come there because of the legends claiming that this place is haunted by all sorts of spooky creatures, including vampires. Yup, stories about shadowy figures hovering over graves with glowing red eyes and sharp fangs never get boring. But this place wasn't always this creepy. It was established in the middle of the 19th century, once neglected and overgrown with crumbling monuments and vegetation that seemed to swallow up graves. But these legends became popular along with the place itself in the 1970s, after the cemetery had appeared in several horror movies. Some visitors there are even self-proclaimed vampire hunters. There's this peaceful and charming village called Pluckley, just a short drive away from London. At least that's what it seems at first sight. People whisper Pluckley could be the most haunted village in England. As you go through its winding streets, you'll come across many spots legends say are haunted. Many of them are connected to the Daring family, which held the title of Lords of the Manor for over 4 centuries. What gives the sense of old times is the round-topped windows on many buildings. Legend has it, hundreds of years ago, Lord Daring escaped when his enemies captured him. He jumped through one of these windows head first. In commemoration of this pretty daring act, every window in the manor house and the village was made in the same style. Even though the manor house burned down in 1951, the legacy of Lord Daring's escape lives on in the charming village of Pluckley. Some say Pluckley is surrounded by the so-called Screaming Wood. There are many legends about paranormal events that have occurred there. There are nice walking trails in this wood, but to be honest, I'd only be brave enough to hit them during the day. And how about the Crooked Forest? It's in Poland, and it consists of 400 pine trees whose trunks take a sharp 90-degree turn and then become weirdly curved, like the letter J. Someone planted them in the early 1930s, but it's still not completely clear how all these trees got the same curve. One scientist said this looked like a typical response to gravity. Plants have a special mechanism that allows them to reorient themselves when the stem is horizontal to gravity. So, these trees may have been grown this way for making boats or furniture. Of course, human imagination goes way beyond science, so many tried to explain the existence of these trees with stories of spirits that possess these trees or mysterious creatures from space that made them this way. Okay, I'm on. Let me just grab my popcorn. Something exciting and kinda unexpected popped out among the rocks of the Ica Valley in Peru. The bones of a really old whale that lived almost 40 million years ago. At first, no one was really impressed because the bones they found were big and weirdly shaped, so people just thought they were looking at giant boulders. I mean, that's cool too, but things got way better when they realized those were the remains of a very large ancient animal that roamed along the coast of ancient Peru. Plus, it was probably the heaviest creature that ever lived. Sorry, blue whale, I know you worked hard to get to the top. The length of over 100 feet and weight of more than 200 tons brought you the status of the biggest animal on our planet. But it seems you've held the title long enough. Time to hand it over to our next candidate, and that one's really gigantic. This ocean beast was probably shorter than the blue whale, but heavier, with a weight that could be between 93 tons and 370 tons. If it's closer to the higher number, it'll make Paracetus the biggest animal ever known to have lived on Earth. And it seems its weight was the result of having extremely thick, dense bones. You can see such bones today in manatees or some other early whales. Dense bones are a great tool for such marine mammals. This feature makes them heavy and allows them to stay submerged most of the time. But at the same time, if their body was too heavy, they would end up sinking all the time, and they would waste too much energy to move back up to the surface. So, to avoid sinking, marine mammals need to have enough lighter tissues, like muscles and fat, to help them float in the water without using too much energy. Now, scientists didn't have the whole skeleton, which makes it hard to tell how big the animal was. But they used the ratio of the heavy bones to the lighter tissues in other marine mammals to estimate the overall weight of this giant ancient whale. Experts found these fossils about 13 years ago and spent the next decade freeing the whale from the rock. Its anatomy and age showed this whale was a cousin of Basilosaurus, a whale that had a long snout full of sharp teeth, and a sleek body similar to that of an eel. Even if Paracetus wasn't bigger than the blue whale, it was still a giant that ruled the ocean depths. Unlike modern whales, there's a possibility that this ancient fellow was a predator that liked to go after bigger prey. And this also changes how we see the history of whales. Scientists used to think these magnificent creatures became really big about 5 million years ago when they started eating lots of small creatures. But here's the proof that giant whales existed even before that. But it's still unclear how this whale managed to find enough food to sustain its enormous body. Plus, it's still hard to tell what exactly this ancient creature had on its menu. It was pretty large and not such a fast swimmer, so it's possible it searched for food in shallow waters. Then it probably ate crustaceans, clams, or some other small animals hiding in the sand. One theory says it was a scavenger, which basically means it munched on remains of everything that would come its way. It's not so unusual to find marine animals in deserts. Many of these regions used to be covered with water anyway. The Sahara in Africa is a perfect example. About 50 to 100 million years ago, this was not a dry desert, but a shallow saltwater body called the Trans-Saharan Seaway. The land is not wet there anymore, of course, but people who lived in that area knew about it because they used to find old shells across the desert. The sea was about 164 feet deep. That sounds enough for a nice swim. Some would say this area looked like modern Puerto Rico, with lots of sun and shallow water. Mangrove forests were a common thing as well as seafloors covered with mollusks, like snails and clams. The marine sediment that was left behind after the sea had dried up is full of different fossils. And the animal that lived in that ancient underwater world didn't look friendly. Plus, they were much bigger than their relatives from modern times, so a regular-sized human would end up as a snack, not even a whole meal. Normally, when animals live on small islands, they can become much bigger than their relatives from the mainland. This is something we call island gigantism, and it happens because there are more resources or fewer predators on islands. Maybe the same thing happened in the Trans-Saharan Seaway. Even though it wasn't an actual island, the water moved in and out, which created little pockets of water. And specific conditions in these pockets might have helped animals grow bigger. So we're talking about giant sea snakes, catfish, and fish that no longer exist today. One had incredibly strong jaws, and the animal used them to eat hard things and even crush shells. Their teeth showed they were fierce predators other animals had every reason to be afraid of. They went through some changes when it came to diet, similar to some types of piranhas. And the competition to get to the top of the food chain wasn't a joke. Not when there were also such large predators as sharks, crocodiles, and ancient relatives of elephants. Sahara went through different phases. If you could use a time machine and take a peek at Earth's largest hot desert as it was about 6,000 years ago, you wouldn't have to struggle with sand and heat. You'd have a nice walk through a green and pretty lush place. In the past, people who lived in that area didn't leave drawings on cave walls that showed camels, sand dunes, and scorpions. All those things you'd see in today's Sahara. Instead, they drew crocodiles. That's additional evidence that the Sahara used to have a lot of water and plants enough to support these big yet scary animals. Around 3 billion years ago, Earth might have been mostly covered with water. Today, it's about 71% of its surface, but it seems that our planet used to be a giant ocean world with no continents at all, just some scattered islands. Scientists studied special rocks in Western Australia that formed in a place deep under the ocean called a hydrothermal vent system. To explain this better, it's important to mention two common oxygen types, O16 and O18. O18 is heavier because it has extra neutrons. O16 evaporates from water more easily, and as researchers studied an old ocean floor, they found a lot of O18, more than in today's oceans. This way, they realized ancient Earth had less dry land than Earth today. Australia is a good spot to conduct these studies because a long time ago, it also used to be a beautiful place with large animals and lush rainforests. But as time went by, the land became drier and Australia had more deserts formed, such as the Great Victoria Desert. Rainforest remained only on the edges of the continent. What happens with deserts across the globe is called desertification. That's when land that used to be good for growing things turns into a desert or something similar. Our planet changes over time, together with its climate. But desertification also happens because of human activities, like mining, farming, and building cities. And when land turns into a desert, it's a problem because it can't support people and animals anymore. Food doesn't grow there. There's not enough clean water, and animals lose their homes. To help with this problem, there's a plan many countries agreed to. They decided to work with farmers to take care of the land, fix damaged areas, and manage water better. All in all, to make our planet a better place for life. Nature can ruin your life with a tsunami, hurricane, tornado, rainstorm, and many other destructive events. But did you know that it also has other, weirder ways to destroy? Let's take a look at the most unusual natural phenomena. How about the orange rain? It's not that orange drops are falling on you. No, the whole sky and the atmosphere are turning dark orange. Orange clouds are pouring dirty orange drops on you. Don't worry, they're not poisonous, but watch your eyes. Don't let the drops get in because they contain sand particles. If you want to see this unusual phenomenon, go to the Canary Islands. Every year, the sky turns orange there and pours orange-red drops of water mixed with sand onto the ground. This phenomenon happens because of the Sahara. In the desert, strong winds blow millions of tons of dust and sand into the air. All this mess penetrates the atmosphere and turns the sky orange. Then, the particles from the Sahara fly toward the Canary Islands and fall on people in the form of heavy rain. Residents of this region experience breathing problems and poor vision in the orange conditions. Airports stop working. All flights are canceled. Under favorable conditions, a storm that carries sand particles can reach both the Mediterranean and Northern Europe. Therefore, if you suddenly see red rain, don't be scared. This is not the apocalypse. Warning, this kind of rain causes anxiety. During this phenomenon, you won't see drops of water. There will be spiders falling from the sky. People have faced spider rains in Australia, the United States, and the United Kingdom. These creatures are called money spiders, or sheet web weavers. During strong winds, they climb as high as possible to the tops of plants, bushes, and fences. Then, they release a parachute-shaped web, and the wind blows them into the sky. They fly high into the air, meeting birds, cold winds, and harsh weather. Not everyone can survive this journey. Then, when the weather calms down, this tiny party lands on the ground. No one knows why spiders behave this way. According to one version, they fly away from places where flooding can begin. In other words, it's a forced migration. And because of this migration, spiders often become the first settlers of territories that have been destroyed by fires or other natural phenomena. But don't worry, these creatures are harmless to humans. They just want to live and multiply. Although, to be honest, it's hard to stay calm when thousands of arthropods are falling on your head. Tornadoes are a destructive force. But look at this. A whirlwind appears during a snowstorm. It's sucking in more and more snow. Now, it's not just a tornado, but a snow-nado. It looks like something terrible and destructive, but don't worry, it's not as scary as it seems. This is a fairly rare disaster that has recently occurred in Utah. The snow tornado came across a man and his dog on its way. It looked impressive and dangerous. Fortunately, no one got hurt. This phenomenon occurs when an air vortex raises snow from the ground. If you see a similar vortex next to you, don't panic. Usually, such phenomena are harmless and don't have enough force to destroy things. This natural phenomenon is much more dangerous than the snow-nado. Just imagine that a mountain of chunks of ice is moving along roads, sweeping away everything in its path. It looks like a tsunami, but instead of water, there are ice boulders. The ice tsunami can destroy houses, cars, and trees. It can move on grass, asphalt, and sand. It can jump out of the water like a crazy salmon. Fortunately, the ice tsunami is not a frequent phenomenon. It occurs when three conditions are met. a flat coast, loose ice, and strong wind. Waves and wind are throwing broken pieces of ice onto the shore. These ice flows accumulate into a huge wall, and then, during strong winds, this ice monster begins to move. Therefore, if you see a large pile of ice near the water, move away from this place as far as possible. And we're back to the tornado again. You already know about snow tornadoes. You've probably seen the footage of tornadoes in a desert when the wind blows sand into the air in documentaries. Tornadoes pass over the ocean's surface and can create a funnel inside the water. But there's a phenomenon that's even cooler and more impressive. It's a fire tornado. Surely not many of you have heard about this thing. It's a very dangerous phenomenon, but people have ventured close to the fiery tornado to study it. But firefighters, by the way, often encounter this devastating phenomenon. A fire tornado forms during forest fires, and sometimes it can appear inside a burning building. If you see a big flame and feel a strong wind, be careful. A fiery funnel may form. But how does this happen? Let's first look at the origin of an ordinary tornado. So, we're somewhere in a dry place in the middle of a hot day. The sun heats the air that is close to the ground. Its lower layers absorb more energy than the upper ones. An increase in temperature makes this air less dense and more buoyant. Then it lifts into the sky in the form of long columns. This rise has a spiral movement. The water in your bathtub moves similarly when it flows through the drain hole. So many of these air vortices are quite weak, and you can't see them. But some of them encounter strong air currents. This accelerates their movement, adds energy, and increases the area. More and more air gets into this vortex, making it stronger. When dust and sand get into these whirlwinds, you see a tornado. The fire tornado follows the same pattern, with only one difference. The air below is heated, not by the sun, but by fire. Fire heats the air, it rises, rotates, and pulls the fire inside. Some of the vortices can reach up to 400 feet high and 50 feet wide. It's like a thin, leaning tower of Pisa made of fire, only twice as tall. This is a truly devastating and terrifying phenomenon. The ground is shaking. Flocks of birds are flying away. You can hear a loud, low rumble. The volcano spits out a giant ash cloud. Lava is flowing from the mouth of the fiery mountain. Rivers of fire are running down and dashing towards you. You have nowhere to escape. The fire is getting closer and closer and… Wait a minute. This lava isn't hot. It's cold. How is that possible? You can observe cold lava flows near many volcanoes. In Indonesia, for example, this phenomenon has recently destroyed entire villages. Yes, it's not hot, but it's still dangerous. Cold lava streams occur when hot lava mixes with ash, sand, and pebbles during wet weather. In a sense, the volcano spews out streams of heavy mud. It covers roads, houses, cars, and trees. Cold lava flows are a destructive phenomenon, so stay away from them. Even if some volcano is very beautiful and you want to take cool photos, don't take any chances. Okay, let's relax a little and end our video with something fun. How about surfing? But instead of ordinary waves, we have icy ones. This phenomenon is called the ice wave. It looks as if someone paused a wave while it was forming before it hit the water. It's a rare occurrence, but you can find it on Mount Washington. The top of the mountain is shrouded in fog most of the year. Cold temperatures, humidity, and winds form frost. Then strong winds force this frost sideways, and thus a wavy shape forms. And when there's a wave, you can ski or snowboard inside, like a surfboard. But be careful, it's pretty cold in there, so wear warm clothes.
Now, have you ever wondered about the longest time it rained nonstop? Even an hour of rain could be a big deal if you're hanging out in a dry spot like the Atacama Desert in South America. It can set a record for that place. But in super rainy spots like the Amazon rainforest, having 40 days of rain in a row might not even turn heads. Interestingly, we only have rainfall records where people live and keep track. Many towns and cities skip the whole rain data collection thing. Plus, there are so many places on Earth where nobody lives, like rainforests or the open ocean, so our rainfall knowledge is a bit patchy. Now, if we were to talk about records, Hawaii has a couple. People there have some seriously long rainy days, especially on islands where winds come from the mountains. From 1939 to 40, they recorded 331 days in a row with measurable rainfall. If you're a person who likes to watch the rain at home with a cup of tea, this might sound ideal to you. But we need to see the sun at least occasionally. Getting some sun is good for your body and soul. Obviously, you get vitamin D. Just 5 to 15 minutes of sunlight a few times a week can make a real difference. And have you ever heard the phrase sunny disposition? Researchers found that people feel down when there's not much sun around. Sunny days make us happier. Sunshine boosts your serotonin, which fights off bad moods. That sunny serotonin isn't just for your mood, it also helps you sleep. And it's also a heart assistant. When the sun hits your skin, your body releases something called nitric oxide, which chills out your blood pressure. Healthy blood pressure means a healthier heart. Now, go tell that to the people who had to go through 881 consecutive days of rain. Yeah, the record was set almost 3 full years of rain. This happened from 1913 to 1916 in Hononumomaki, Hawaii. It rained like there was no tomorrow because the region is a tropical rainforest. How do clouds make rain? Well, rain happens when damp air goes up into the sky and gets a bit chilly. As this air cools down, tiny water vapor molecules huddle up, forming super small droplets that look like a fluffy cloud team. Now, inside these clouds, things get playful. The air moving around can sometimes make these droplets bump into one another and get bigger. Then they can turn into ice crystals high up in the clouds where it's chilly. These little ice buddies get heavy enough to take a tumble down, melting in the rain on the way to the ground. Now, there isn't just one type of rain. Raindrops can come from all kinds of storms. Thunderstorms show up, make a splash, and then they're out. They can dump a ton of rain in no time. Other storms, like winter storms, are more laid back. They stick around for days and dish out gentle rain or even snow if it's cold enough. Usually, the weather switches between moods. It's nature's way of balancing things out. After stormy weather, the sun comes out, the air dries up, and we get to enjoy some clear skies. But things can get interesting if you're in a place with mountains near the ocean. When moist air hits the mountains, it's forced to climb over them, creating rainfall lasting sometimes for weeks. What if I told you there was a time on Earth when rain fell continuously for 2 million years and completely reshaped the planet's destiny? At the end of the Permian era, around 234 million years ago, I wasn't around then, but I read about it, the Triassic period began, marked by the onset of an extended period of rainfall. This phenomenon is now called the Carnian pluvial event. Well, that's what they decided to call it. Recent studies, supported by evidence, suggest that it didn't reshape the planet in that sense, and that it was triggered by coal combustion. The rain wasn't continuous either. So we just debunked a myth here. Woohoo! Next, we have columnar jointing. This is the fancy term for groove patterns that form in lava flows, sills, dikes, and other rocky stuff. These lava creations come in all shapes and sizes. Most are seen as straight, parallel columns. Some have curves and varying widths. They can be as high as 1,181 inches. I'll save you the math. It's roughly 98 feet. The columns are formed by pressure and the cooling process. As lava becomes cooler, it shrinks and forms cracks. Once a crack starts, the lava moves around. These cracks expand to the surface of the flow. Water sneaks into the cooling lava, making it chill down fast starting from the surface, leaving its mark in those patterns. Devil's Postpile in California is a must-visit place if you want to see columnar jointing. But hey, they're found all around the world. Let's raise our heads to the sky to see something magical. Fire rainbows, also known as circumhorizontal arcs, look like flames dancing above the clouds. To see these eye-catching arcs, you need a special cloud type called cirrus clouds and the sun at least 58 degrees high in the sky. It's a VIP collaboration between sunlight and clouds. Let's break it down further. Take London, for instance. It's around 51 degrees north. Now, sorry Londoners, no fire rainbows for you. Now we move to deep waters to see underwater crop circles. These are giant circular patterns found in 1995 near the shores of southern Japan. Locals were baffled. They dubbed them mystery circles, as if the ocean had a secret talent for sand art. The mystery was solved in 2011. The unlikely artist turned out to be a tiny pufferfish, just 5 inches long. The researchers found out that males were on a mission, spending a solid 7 to 9 days building their circles by swimming in and out and using their fins to carve valleys into the sandy floor. They decorate the peaks of their creations with bits of shells and corals, turning their sandy canvases into masterpieces. Okay, they don't do it for the sake of art. The curious circles have a purpose. The sandy center of the circle serves as a nest. Male swimming moves mix things up, getting sand particles just where they need to be. When a lady pufferfish swims by, the male twirls and dances, swirling sand around. If she is impressed and thinks he is the one, she lays her eggs in the sandy heart of the circle. There you go, another happy ending. Now let's look at frost flowers. You might have seen thin sheets of ice that look like delicate petals and sometimes pop up from the stems of plants. The ice is about as thick as a credit card. It forms when the weather is cold outside. The soil is damp but not frozen, as well as plant stems. Not all plants produce these frost flowers, and the conditions must be just right. Here's how it happens. The water inside a plant stem gets pulled up from the ground. When it freezes, it expands and cracks the stem vertically. As it hits the chilly air, it turns into ice. As more water gets pulled up through the crack, it keeps pushing out super thin layers of ice. Whether a frost flower looks like a narrow ribbon or a wider one depends on the length of the crack. And the way it curls and shapes itself into these petals is random, or the reason might lie in the difference in friction along the sides of the crack. These frost flowers are unique and delicate, and they don't last long. They melt or just disappear quickly. To spot them, keep an eye out for tall grass, especially in places that don't get mowed much. Pay attention to purple ironweed, blackberries, and wing stems. You're in the Atacama Desert in northern Chile, one of the driest places on Earth. But this desert has a beautiful secret. Every 3 to 5 years, flowers pop up out of nowhere. It's so famous, it's also called the flowering desert. Seeds lie around in the ground just waiting for some rain. When the desert gets enough water, about 200 types of flowers sprout up. The yellow sands of the Atacama turn purple, white, green, and even pink. Another mystical phenomenon that can be seen in the desert is called a sand waterfall. When the wind brings a lot of sand to the edge of the canyon, it begins to fall down. Now amplify this effect 100 times and you get a sand waterfall in Saudi Arabia. It really is like Niagara Falls, only there's not a drop of water. The locals say this phenomenon warns of an impending sandstorm. Fairy rings, also known as elf rings or pixie rings, are mysterious circles of mushrooms that appear in grasslands and forested areas. There's a lot of debate about why these fairy rings form a nearly perfect circle. Some superstitions claim that fairy dances would burn the ground, causing mushrooms to rapidly grow. In southern India, between July and September 2001, people witnessed one of the strangest weather phenomena in recorded history. The rain was red. What many would have thought to be a typical rainstorm left them shocked. The color was bright enough to stain clothes. There were other colors too, such as green, yellow, brown, and even black. In the middle of a monsoon, red rain started to fall, and so did periodically for several weeks. Researchers have found this unusual rain is stained either by dust or algae, so don't try to catch any on your tongue. Scientists aren't entirely sure how the algae got all the way up there. This does make events like this a little unsettling. Now, people who live in rural central Norway over the Hessdalen Valley can often witness floating lights of white, yellow, and red cross the sky. The lights appear both at day and night, And once back in the 80s, the 1980s, they were spotted 15 to 20 times in a single week. The Hessdalen lights can last just a few seconds, but sometimes they can last more than an hour. The lights move, seeming to float or even sway around. Some scientists believe that the reason for these lights is due to ionized iron dust. Others say it's a combination that includes sodium, oxygen, and hydrogen. Many people claim they're just misidentified aircrafts. Norway! Snow donuts are one of the rarest meteorological sights to see, with perfect weather conditions needed just to create them. Found in any snow-covered mountain area, like the Rocky Mountains, the wind, temperature, snow, ice, and moisture all have to work together for us to see these phenomenal rings. A thin layer of wet snow on the ground. Under that layer, ice or powdered snow. Then, a strong enough breeze to roll the donut down a hill, just like a snowball. Once it stops rolling, it can be the size of a baseball or as large as a car tire. It all depends on how strong the wind is. A newly formed snow donut won't stay around for very long, so hurry up with that camera and watch your head. Can you believe there's another place on Earth with its own ecosystem and atmosphere, similar to another planet? Well, start believing. Movil Cave, located in southeastern Romania, remained closed in complete darkness for a whopping 5.5 million years. It wasn't until workers discovered the cave, when they were looking for a place to build, that anyone learned about it. Scientists carved out an opening to the cave and found that a completely sustained ecosystem was thriving inside. As a pathway was carved through the rock past numerous tunnels, scientists found a lake of sulfuric water that stank like rotten eggs. The air was filled with hydrogen sulfide and had 100 times more carbon dioxide than Earth's atmosphere contains. Needless to say, this air is completely toxic. What's even crazier is that a whole ecosystem has been existing in this cave, with 33 species that can't be found anywhere else on Earth. This cave gives us a glimpse of what could possibly exist on other planets with completely different atmospheres. How it managed to exist on Earth all this time without anyone knowing is rather unbelievable, isn't it? Now, check these trees out. They're called Indian rubber trees. Their strong roots grow not underground, but on the surface. With the help of special frames and fasteners, people have learned to control how these roots grow. Let's say a tree is next to a small pit. You need to make a bridge from one end of this pit to the other. You direct the growing tree roots in the needed direction. Over time, the roots penetrate the ground and strengthen under endless downpours. It takes about 15 years to create one bridge. Here's another amazing tree called the Tree of Life. It grows in Bahrain's desert. The tree has been standing on top of this sandy hill for more than 400 years, surrounded by miles of sand. It's extremely hot here and there's no moisture. But despite this, the tree has green leaves and it continues to grow. So far, scientists haven't figured out yet how the tree gets moisture and nutrients. There are only places with oil deposits around. Locals think the tree is sacred. After all, it demonstrates the magic of life and the power of nature. Some experts are sure it's all about the roots. They go so deep that they can reach underground sources of water. So, there you are. You've been driving for hours through the night. You didn't have any chance to sleep, so your mind is hanging by a thread. You stop the car and go out to stretch your limbs. And then you look up into the sky and see a beautiful sunrise. Whoa, wait. There are 3 suns in the sky. You rub your eyes, but nope, there's still 3 bright stars in the sky. No, our home star hasn't been torn into 3 pieces, nor has it been visited by 2 other stars. This is called a sundog. It occurs mostly during severe frosts. Small ice crystals in the sky bend the light. As a result, you may see 3 bright spots in the sky instead of just 1. This phenomenon is officially called a halo. Usually it's just a circle around the sun. You can even see a halo at night, too. Just look at a street lamp and you'll see a bright circle around it. Sometimes, a halo can take on a fancier shape. If there's a lot of ice in the air, the light is warped even more. Just like in a room with a dozen mirrors. Then, the halo can take on the shape of a human eye. Because of this phenomenon, a false dawn can also occur. While you're looking at the horizon, the dawn begins and the edge of the sun appears. A little bit more and wait, the sun starts to just dissolve in the sky. After a few moments, it's dark again. And only a minute later, the real sun shows its face. It was the same light curvature effect you saw before with the three suns. Only now, the light is curved vertically, not horizontally. And instead of the real sun, its reflection in ice crystals in the sky appeared. But the sunrise with three stars on the horizon is actually real. Not on Earth, though, but 340 light-years away. There's a star system at the center of which lurks a star almost twice the size of the Sun. And there are two smaller stars orbiting around this giant. This strange world has a planet, too. Sunsets and dawns there really happen with three stars. If you brought your significant other to a park bench to watch a sunset here, your date would go just fine, whatever that means. And since we're talking about the most baffling natural phenomena, it would be a crime not to mention snow in a desert. Yep, in the winter of 2018, the inhabitants of the Sahara Desert, one of the driest and hottest places on this planet, woke up to discover a thick blanket of snow covering the sand. In some places, the layer of snow enveloping the dunes reached a staggering 15 inches. Meteorologists, however, had an explanation for this exciting phenomenon. They stated that cold pools of air, combined with the precipitation from the most recent storm, resulted in a snowfall instead of rain. So, what do you do in that case? Build snow camels? One hump or two. So in Westbrook, Maine, people saw an enormous ice disk in January 2019. This disk was like a wintry carousel. It was spinning away in the Penobscot River. Residents called it everything from an icy lazy Susan to a frozen spinning wheel. It was estimated to be around 300 feet wide, which made it one of the biggest ice disks ever seen. Weirdly, the spinning ice disk notion isn't new. They've shown up in places like Russia and Washington before. They were almost always a perfect circle. So why do they happen? Well, some scientists in 1997 thought it was because river water created a whirlpool effect around a chunk of ice, smoothing it out to be perfectly circular. Yet in 2016, other scientists claimed that river currents helped these disks get started, but temperature changes kept them twirling. Warmer water makes the ice melt and sink, creating a vortex that keeps the disk spinning. The warmer the water, the faster it spins. Ever heard of the Hestilin lights of Norway? They aren't the same as northern lights. Think of these lights as glowing balls. They have been seen since at least the 1930s. These luminous wonders show up in all sorts of colors and shapes. Sometimes they flicker, and other times they just chill in the air. The Hestilin lights can show up 10 to 20 times a week. They appear both during the day and at night. They can last for just a few seconds or hover for over an hour. Interestingly, nobody has a clue about what exactly they are. The efforts to understand these lights include Project Hestilin, started in 1983, and later projects like the Triangle Project. Despite ongoing research, there's no consensus on the origin of the lights. Some suggested explanations include misperception of celestial bodies, aircraft, or mirages. One theory ties the lights to airborne dust from mining, while another mentions plasma, formed by ionized air and dust during radon decay. Okay. Ringing rocks is a cool geological thing you probably didn't know about, and it's our next stop on the Mysterious Natural Phenomena Tour. You can find them in Bucks County in the U.S. If you give these rocks a hit with a hammer or another rock, they start ringing. Scientists have been studying them, but the mystery remains. There are different hypotheses about this one too. Things like the size and shape of the boulders and how they're stacked can affect the sounds they make. But that alone doesn't give them the ability to ring. Even though the sound is often described as metallic, it's likely because of the rock's density and internal stress, not just its iron content. A scientific experiment from the 1960s suggested that the ringing ability came from some internal stress, not external weathering. The live rocks, found in the middle of boulder fields, showed expansion or relaxation after being cut, indicating internal elastic stresses. A slow weathering rate in dry fields could cause these stresses. The relic stress theory suggests that these boulders act like guitar strings. A de-stressed boulder gives a dull thud, but a stressed one resonates at different frequencies. The boulders can still ring when removed from their fields, leading to myths about stealing them. Most fields are now cleared of smaller ringers, and breaking large boulders stops the ringing. Large equipment is needed to move the remaining small ringers, weighing over a ton. Now let's talk about the Naga fireballs. They only show up along the Mekong River in Asia. These picky fireballs hang out in just a 155-mile stretch of the river. The reddish glowing balls rise naturally from the water into the air. Their scope ranges from small particles to the size of a basketball. The reported number of fireballs varies from tens to thousands per night. They can be spotted all year round, but they seem to go wild during the full moon in late autumn. Why? Well, that's just another one of their little mysteries. Some have tried to explain the phenomenon scientifically. One theory suggests that flammable phosphine gas from the marshy environment could be the cause. However, skeptics argue that spontaneous ignition isn't likely to be the reason. Another scientific explanation involves free-floating plasma orbs created when surface electricity is discharged into a solution. Still, these typically occur in controlled settings during experiments, and not naturally. We can carry on with ball lightning. It's a super rare thing, a glowing ball that shows up in the air. It likes to make an appearance close to the ground during thunderstorms, hanging out with regular lightning. It can be red, orange, yellow, white, or blue, and it's often accompanied by a hissing sound and a funky smell. This flashy sphere of light is a quick show. It lasts just a few seconds, zooming around, and then poof! It's gone, sometimes quietly, sometimes with a little pop. Ball lightning might seem like a troublemaker, but it's usually harmless. Sure, it's been known to burn or melt stuff on occasion, but it's not out to get us. Scientists aren't entirely sure why it happens or how it's related to regular lightning. People have been tossing around ideas like weird air or gas behavior, high-density plasma stuff, or even a vortex of glowing gases. Even microwave radiation trapped in a plasma bubble is on the list. But don't get it confused with bead lightning. That's a different one, more like a string of beads. And it happens when a bolt of lightning sticks around for a good chunk of a second. Shh! We're now at the Mapimi Silent Zone. It's this spot near this place in Mexico. The story goes that in this desert patch, you can't pick up any radio signals or talk to anyone. In July 1970, a rocket from Utah went off course and landed here. It was carrying some sort of cobalt. Authorities had to haul away tons of soil from the crash site. Now, thanks to the cleanup, the Silent Zone is wrapped up in myths. People talk about weird magnetic stuff messing with radios and about plants and critters going through mutations. Well, locals go with it, boosting tourism in the region. Alright, we can now talk a bit about the sun. Well, it's not just a big ball of fire. It's got an outer layer called the corona. Think of it as an invisible sun jacket made of gases. You usually can't see it because the sun is super bright. But there's a trick. During a total solar eclipse, when the moon slides between us and the sun, the corona shows up, all glowing and white. The corona is scorching hot, even hotter than the sun's surface, which is kinda weird. Scientists are on a mission to crack this heat mystery. They found something called heat bombs shooting from the sun into the corona, exploding and warming things up even more. But that might be just one piece of the puzzle. You see, the sun's surface is like a playground, covered in magnetic fields. These magnetic fields create cool shapes on the sun, like loops and streamers. Special telescopes help us see these cool patterns up close. The corona stretches way out into space, and from there, it sends out the solar wind that moves through our solar system. Its particles are so speedy that they escape the sun's gravity. So, there's this cool spot called Kuala Sangalore Beach that you can only check out when the tide is low. The timing changes every day, and you can't get there when the tide is high. Most of the time, it's hiding under the sea, not even on the map. But when the tide's just right, bam, it pops up. kind of like Malaysia's own version of Salar de Uyuni. People call it the mirror of the sky because when it's not underwater, it turns into a giant reflection of the sky. An awesome spot for cool Instapics. Besides being a sweet travel spot, it's also home to a bunch of marine life, like sea and baby clams that live all over the sandy shores.